This is Jen Kruger, Director of Communication for Photo Marketing Association, and I'm speaking today with Dr. Jeff Gusky, who is an absolutely fascinating guy. In addition to being a medical doctor and an explorer, he is also a photographer for National Geographic. He's been on assignment for the New York Times, and his work has been published internationally. He's joining us today to tell us a bit more about his remarkable story. Jeff, can you please begin by telling us how you first became interested in photography and how you took that interest to the great heights that you have achieved as a professional photographer?
Well, it's all an extension of what I do at the bedside as a practicing emergency physician. There are many things about modern life that we are numb to that make us vulnerable, whether it's terrorism or mass destruction or the effects that mass media and computing has on our children. Modern life dehumanizes us. And so as an ER doc, my role is to help people see risk and to circumvent danger. And so I stumbled onto a way of doing that through photography in 1995 when I went to Eastern Europe in the dead of winter and found a remnant of the concentration camp Plaszow, which was depicted in the movie Schindler's List. And there was an intuitive switch that flipped on inside me. I found places that I later learned were the site of terrible killing and mass murder, and I realized that photography could be a way of helping people to see things that are hidden in plain sight that can tell us about ourselves and about the risks we face as modern people.
Well, as a fine art photographer, you've extensively chronicled what you've called the hidden worlds of World War I. Tell us the story behind that.
I was in France in 2011 on a scouting trip for a film documentary that had a little piece on World War I. And I'm an intuitive, so when I'm there, I started to realize that, oh my gosh, there's a lot more left from 100 years ago than I had imagined, and saw the possibility of a book project. And one thing led to another, and I ended up meeting a bureaucrat inside the French Defense Ministry who turned out to be the guy who was in charge of planning the 100-year anniversary of World War I. And he introduced me to local officials all along the Western Front, which is a 450-mile line that goes from Switzerland all the way up to the Atlantic Ocean in Belgium. But most of it is in France. So with these introductions to local officials, I in turn was introduced to local people, and over time gained their trust, and they shared their secrets.
Tell us a little bit about how the pictures in that collection were made and what equipment you used.
It was an experience of trial and error, because imagine doing portraits in complete darkness. Everything had to be packed in, carried through little holes or down shafts underground. And so the techniques are much like a portrait photographer would use in terms of soft boxes, beauty dishes, snoops, ways of modifying the light to make it very soft and to bring out the surface textures of these beautiful artwork and carvings that have been left from 100 years ago. And then there's the challenge of creating context, because these places are vast. Imagine being in a subway station, except it goes on and on and on. For one place, for example, that I photographed had 41 kilometers underground in one place.
Wow.
And they have high ceilings. They were ancient rock quarries from which the stone for castles and cathedrals was mined, dating back to the Middle Ages. And they're very stable geologically. And so when World War I came along, They brought the technologies of the day underground and very quickly made them into modern cities with power plants, railways, hospitals, food systems, telephones, theaters, chapels, synagogues, and all of the elements of the city infrastructure, offices and workshops and living quarters, and some of them are so large you even have street signs. And so it's a world frozen in time. These are places that are under private farmland in places that really doesn't want the outside world to come in. And so I was very fortunate to find it's like going into King Tut's tomb for the first time. You're connecting to 100 years ago as if it's today. And it's a very human connection. And for example, imagine when you hear about a note in a bottle that washes up on shore from someone that was shipwrecked a century ago. They're long since passed away. And all they wanted was that somebody knew that they once lived, that their life had meaning, that they were a living, breathing human being. And imagine finding that by the thousands. Young men on both sides who just wanted someone to know that I was here, I existed.
Oh.
And this is something deep within all of us, that we want our lives we want to feel like we matter. And so when you are looking in complete darkness with a little headlamp shining on a wall, and there's an inscription or a message to a loved one, or something about home by someone who lived 100 years ago, who may have died the next day, it's very emotional.
Oh, it's heart-wrenching. Oh, such a powerful mental image. I love that you have captured some of that for people to actually be able to see. And as you mentioned earlier, being a ER doc has kind of led you to want to heighten people's awareness of danger. How else has your background as a physician impacted your work as a photographer?
My experience as an emergency physician has trained me to work in very traumatic environments, function, make decisions, but not lose my connection to the patient. So you have a semi-permeable membrane around your emotions that allows you to work in environments that would ordinarily cause post-traumatic stress and that would be overwhelming. So I'm working in places where collectively millions of people have been lost. And this is not my first project on mass destruction. So that's the training as a doctor enables you to function and still be human and be sensitive. And also we as doctors are trained to drill down on in great detail on what we're seeing. And so photography to me is all about seeing, and the training has a crossover.
Wow. I know a lot of the people listening to this are very inspired by your story. What would you say to someone who's listening who really loves photography and who wants to become a professional and do something deeply meaningful that can truly have an impact on the world as you have?
Well, I feel humbled and thank you for your kind words. I feel humbled by the opportunities I've had. But what I could suggest is that just by being curious, by having a vision and executing on it, by being relentless, by being endlessly curious, and by pushing yourself technically to know the most you can about your equipment, so much so that your equipment almost falls out of the picture, and you're able to use it as an extension of your inner eye. Mm-hmm. That's what I would recommend. And so it's a combination of following an inner vision of following something that you're feeling, that you see, and combining that with technical excellence, and never settling. Like, for example, now I'm reinventing everything I'm doing underground with the work of a photographer named Harold Ross, who does this amazing technique, which is a derivative of light painting, but I don't know of anyone else who does it. In the studio, he makes photographs that look like a Vermeer or a Rembrandt, and I'm adapting those techniques underground. And so I'm having to learn completely new, to go outside of my skill set, and it's very humbling. And so I urge everyone who is inspired by doing something like this to push yourself and never get comfortable with what you know. You can always do better.
Oh, that's good advice. How can our listeners learn more about you and about what you're doing?
Every day between now and the end of June 2019, we're publishing a new photograph from the Hidden World of World War I at Hidden WWI on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. It's Hidden WWI for Roman numeral 1. And also my website, jeffgusky.com. And then there's going to be a lot more coming. I can't tell you which channel, but we've just agreed to a documentary by one of the well-known channels. Hopefully we'll have a series. There's going to be a big exhibition at one of the country's largest museums that's going to run 18 months, starting in 2017. And there's more. So we're just getting started. And also, we hope to get mass audiences involved in telling the stories of who these soldiers were. And so I look forward to people getting involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you are shining light on this topic and raising awareness. And I hope that the documentary does come into fruition and become very well known, because these are stories that need to be told. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a
great
pleasure
to talk with you.
Pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time and for sharing your story with us. And we wish you very safe travels.
Honor.
Yeah, I know you're off to France tomorrow. We wish you all the best as you
Thank you.
Continue on your mission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.